to another episode of Top 5 Albums and a Dud. So in the past I've done, I think I've done Duran Duran. There's been a few of them, Adam and the Ants or Adamant. This time around I'm choosing a band who I love, and they've appeared in my kind of top 10s and top 20s. And today I've gone for Depeche Mode, and this is quite a difficult list to put together, especially try and find a dud. I assumed it was going to be one of the new albums, but actually it's not. You'd be surprised what the dud is. So Depeche Mode, or Depeche Mode as some people like to call them, were formed, I've got a little info here, were formed in Basildon in Essex in 1980. Originally there was Martin Gore, there was Dave, Andrew Fletcher and Vince Clarke. But once they released a debut album, Speak and Spell, which is a classic, it doesn't appear in this list, but it's definitely still a classic. Vince left to pursue, he then created Yazoo, again, who became another kind of iconic band, and later on Erasure. And Martin Gore took over kind of writing credits. For me, it's a band that I've followed for years, and it kind of time-stamping my youth and growing up. There's always a Depeche Mode album or Depeche Mode single, and I've seen them live a few times, and I just think they're incredible. I mean, if you look at the last album that they just released, my review on that, incredible album. The few before that were good, but this one here was definitely one of my favourite albums. It doesn't appear in this list. I haven't listened to it enough to kind of place it within my top 5 or top 10. But it's still a great album, and I'm sure if I do this again in the future, it will be in there somewhere with some of the new albums. So, as I said, I'm going to go for my top 5 Depeche Mode albums, a little bit of information on them, and then I'm going to go for my dud. I do have little bits of info, so if you see me kind of looking down, it's only because I've got them written down. There's so many different release dates and little bits of information I thought was quite nice to talk about. After this, if you agree with my top 5 and a dud, let me know. If you don't, let me know. It'll be quite interesting to see what you think of these albums, or even my dud. Bear in mind, a dud doesn't mean it was a dud for the band. It might have been a successful album for the band. It's just my personal taste. Was it an album that I go back to again and again? Were there any standout tracks? Was there enough standout tracks? And I think the one I've chosen well. So my number 5, it's quite difficult because I do like this album. There's a couple of tracks on this album I think that are just incredible, and it's basically songs of faith and devotion. Not sure about the artwork there. It's the 8th studio album by Depeche Mode, and was released on the 22nd of March 1993. This album has definitely got a more darker vibe, a more kind of aggressive vibe to it. And a couple of bits of information on this. It topped the charts in the UK and the US. And to support the album, they embarked on a 14-month-long devotional tour. I did see a date of that tour, and they were just brilliant. There was a lot of... This is the last album that featured Alan Wilder. It's funny because on this I bookend his career in his. I've got the album that he started with, and I've got the album that he finished with. But tensions were kind of rising in the band at this time, and this was the last album that Alan Wilder had anything to do with, which is a shame. And I hope in the future that they do get back together just for that one last album, because I think Alan Wilder was an incredible force within Depeche Mode, and I know he's definitely sorely missed by a lot of Mode fans as well, especially me. So this album, why do I like this album? It wasn't an instant for me. Walking in My Shoes was a great track, and I think I Heard Through the Grapevine, that was Andy Fletcher's favourite Depeche Mode song, Walking in My Shoes. I Feel You, great track, classic kind of Depeche Mode. In Your Room. There could have been another couple of singles of this, whereas I love Judas on here and Condemnation. Definitely a lot darker, and I love that kind of vibe. You probably, if you listen to my other kind of videos and my other top 10s and top 20s, I do like the darker side of music, as well as the extreme, the poppier, but the darker side of stuff I really like. A bit of lyrics, sound, look, I'm there. And I've just noticed this one here, this record, I don't know where I got it from, but it came out on General Records, and it looks like it's a Russian copy. There's Russian writing on it, and the inner vinyl has got big General Records. If anyone knows what this is, it's General Records, and it's got some Russian writing here, but there's nothing else. A load of Russian writing down here, but there is literally nothing else inside this other than the image, the inner sleeve, which is the same as the UK copy, but the labels on the inside are very, very different. If I remember rightly, General Records. Maybe it's a bootleg, maybe it's a legal press, I don't know. But if anyone knows about the General Records Russian release of this album, is this a legit copy or not? I'll be quite interested to know. But that is my number 5, and that is Depeche Mode, Songs of Faith and Devotion. Good album. If you haven't heard it, check it out. And Alan Wilder's first album. The number 4 in my list, this will appear again in a future list because they're going to be doing a list of like live albums, and this will definitely be in there. Now this is Depeche Mode's 101. It was released 13th of March 1989 on Mute Records, and it chronicles the final leg of the band's Music for the Masses tour and the final show on 18th of June in 1988 at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. If anyone's seen that video for Everything Counts, where Dave has got the crowd in his hands and he shouts the word Pasadena, and it's always stuck in my head. The name of the album was 101 because it is what the 101st show or the final of that particular tour, and that's why it got its name from. The 101 is also the name of a famous road in America as well, and it was Alan Wilder that came up with the title of this. I love the sleeve, and it's only recently I picked up some vinyl because they repressed this recently on double vinyl as well, and this is such a beautiful album. It's such a great live album, and I do listen to this quite a lot. It's just insane. I absolutely love this. I mean, if I open it up, you'll see this is almost like a best of, to be quite honest, and sometimes it's very hard to kind of realise, oh god, this was actually live, because they've done so well, the inner sleeve. We all know that classic image. Double vinyl, as I said. But you've got everything from like, I mean, just picking one vinyl up, Stripped, Somebody, The Things You Said, Black Celebrate. I mean, those are just classic tracks. The other side, you've got Pimp, Behind the Wheel, Strange Love, Something to Do, Black. I mean, it's just the greatest hits live. And that is my number 4, and it's Depeche Mode 101. The live record, which will appear in another list of mine, but I just love this. Sometimes I put this on and I just love the way, I think it's Everything Counts, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way he just keeps it going and the crowd are chanting, and it makes a hair stand on the back of my head. And also live video of this came out as well. This final concert is actually out. You can actually watch the final concert, and it's just incredible. I mean, what a showman, what a band. Brilliant, lovely, 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 lovely record and lovely video. So number 4, 101. My number 3 is... This is quite a difficult one to kind of choose because I do love this album. And I really want to put it higher, but this is as high as I could put it. And it's number 3, and it is Some Great Reward. Brilliant album. Now this album was the 4th studio album by Depeche Mode, and it was released on 24th of September 1984 on Mute Records. The album peaked at number 5 in the UK and number 51 in the United States, and was supported by the Some Great Reward tour. And it's something that a lot of bands don't do. I mean, when Depeche Mode, released an album, they did a tour to follow it. And I think that was another reason why the band is so successful, how the record's so successful. They promoted that record, and they always did a tour to mark the release of that album. I'd never seen them on this tour. I don't know where I was, but I completely missed this tour. And this album, because the previous album, Construction Time, again, they were using samplers. They got, on the exactly same one here. There's a lot of samples on here, a lot of sounds that you may kind of hear on Construction Time. Again, a lot of the kind of metallic sounds. It's all over this record, and obviously Black Celebration, Music of the Masses. So this is following them albums we're going to be talking about in a second. There's a bit of information that I like about this album. I mean, you got Master and Servant, Blasphemous Rumours, Somebody. Somebody is a beautiful track. I'm not sure that was a single. They've had so many singles out. I mean, there's a whole pile of Depeche Mode records behind me. It takes up a whole shelf. A lot of 12, so I'm sure it appeals in there somewhere. This was the first album to have chart success in the US with the single "People Are People," and I remember when that record came out, because I kind of lost interest with Depeche Mode because I think they went a bit too kind of like poppy, and I wanted something a bit darker. And I remember sitting and watching Top of the Pops, and this came on, and I thought the band looked incredible. I think Dave had a little blonde bit in his little quiff. And it was just brilliant. People Are People, and everyone was kind of singing this song. I think it was one of the biggest tracks for them as well, People Are People. And they do it on all the live gigs, and that is basically on this album. But you've got loads of other great tracks on this album. And again, the record I'm holding at the moment is the reissue. The reason why I've gone and bought them all again, because my originals are all tattered because I used to play them to death. Again, you've got the gatefold. So this is the reissue. You've got the gatefold, some great images there. Classic Depeche Mode. It's only a single vinyl this time round. Black vinyl. But you've got Master and Servant, and I remember when they did that song, and they were on some daytime show, and I remember sitting there going, wow, because they're all in leather, and I swear at one point Martin Gore had nipple clamps under that vest. They looked so good, and it kind of suited that Master and Servant. I don't think people kind of realised what that song was about. Blasphemous Rumours, great, all about religion. You've also got things like Something to Do. I mean, I love that. I don't know why that didn't come out as a single. People Are People, It Doesn't Matter, Stories of Old. One thing I like about the Mode, I'm going to call them, is there's never throwaway songs on their albums. They really fine-tune that track selection for their albums, and the way they kind of follow each other. I mean, any one of them could have really been a single from a lot of their albums. Same with this one, yeah. And that is my number 3, and it is Depeche Mode's Some Great Reward. Great artwork as well, following the kind of feel of like Construction Time Again as well. I loved all this stuff. So that was my number 3. What could my number 2 be? It was always a fight between this one and my number 1. My number 1 in this list is obviously my top 20 of all time albums, but there was always a fight between these two albums. And even now I listen to this album, and again, I just love how dark this album is. And I know everyone's going to go, oh, of course, it's a classic. And it is Black Celebration. And again, artwork's great. I just love the effort they put into their artwork. It's very rare they had them on the cover, which I quite liked. But Black Celebration is the 5th studio album for Depeche Mode, and it came out on 17th of March 1986. Again, out on Mute Records, produced by Daniel Miller. Daniel Miller had a lot to do with this album. And when he was doing this album, he really wanted to kind of capture the dark side of Depeche Mode, and I think he'd done really well. It got to number 4 in the UK album charts, and has been cited as one of the most influential Depeche Mode albums. A lot of great bands have cited this as an influential record. I'm not surprised, to be honest. It's been ranked number 15 on the 25 greatest albums of all time. I'm not sure who did that list, but it's in the US anyway. The singles from it, I think they're really Stripped, Question of Time, Question of Lust. I also used to get mixed up with that. I don't know why they released those 2 singles, because they're very, very similar, but very different in sounding. Question of Lust, Question of Time, sure you had like better kind of track titles than that. And released them both as a single as well. Stripped, again, was brilliant, and I do have, I will be doing a future list on Depeche Mode 12 inches, because there's some awesome remixes of Depeche Mode, and one of them is the On New Sound remix for Stripped, and the B-side was People Are People, incredible. But I will do another list for that. But this album, again, this is again another repressed, and that reason being, I've played the other one to death, and the covers look so tatty. I can't redo videos, so I went and bought it again. And I'm glad I did, because the cover is just beautiful. It's got like matte with the gloss and everything, and I'm not sure you can see that there. Beautiful. Lovely. A lot of effort went into this kind of repress. Most of the time when people go for a repress of an album that came out this long ago, it's almost like they've just scanned the cover, but not with this one. They've really put a lot of effort into this. Again, gatefold. Can't beat a good old gatefold. Inside you've got the classic picture of the mode. I love this image, and obviously this is the same image that was used for, I think, their first compilation. Again, when I do a compilation, that's going to be in there because that was incredible. But I love that, and the coloured in yellow hair, and just a little bit of information about the album as well. The actual inner sleeve. So look, yeah, a lot of effort. You've got all this song lyrics on here. And looking at some of the song lyrics, I mean, we know this anyway. When I read them, it's not what I've been singing for years. But it's good to actually know what they are. The vinyl itself is just lovely, lovely, lovely vinyl. The songs themselves, God, let's have a look. Black Celebration, I loved. What a great intro to an album. Really slow. It was kind of setting up the tone for the album. And I think you have to listen to that in the right order as well. Start off with Black Celebration, Fly on the Windscreen, A Question of Lust, Sometimes, beautiful song. A Question of Time, Stripped, Here Is a House, World Full of Nothing, Dressed in Black. Yeah, as you can see, I love wearing black. Best. New Dress. Every track on this album, again, is just incredible. Again, it came out on mute. Great album. So this, I was going to put this as a number one with mine. I have two number ones, but I thought, no, I'm going to put it as number two. But this is fighting with the number one spot. So maybe in a future list, it may move up to number one. And that's Depeche Mode's Black Celebration. So, what is my number one? I mean, it's really obvious if you've watched my other videos. It's in my top 20. But my number one is Depeche Mode's Construction Time Again. And this album came out in 1983 on the 22nd of August. And I just remember buying this. I was 12 years old. And I remember going to the only record shop. You probably heard me talk about this one record shop where I lived when I lived in Cyprus. And I remember this came in on tape. I'd obviously knew the previous records, so I bought it on tape. And I just couldn't stop listening to it, and I hunted down the vinyl. And this is the original vinyl from way back then. It's a bit tatty, which is quite surprised. There's scratch marks and everything at the back. You can see I have played this to death. But I couldn't find a repress of this, and I thought, no, I'm going to use this. My number one, I'm going to use my original copy. So Construction Time Again, great tracks on there. This is the album that Alan Wilder joined the band, and you can definitely see a shift in kind of sound and production, how everything tight, how tight the music was, the melodies, the structure. There was definitely a massive shift in this album compared to the previous, even though the previous was an amazing album, but it was definitely a shift. And I think the influence of Alan Wilder really kind of helped on this album. Again, you've got this released Everything Counts before it, which really kind of brought kind of Depeche Mode back into the kind of spotlight again. Then it was soon followed by this album, so there was just this bang, bang, bang of Depeche Mode, of all these kind of releases coming out from this album. And loads of kind of stories about how they got into sampling and videos that you've seen since, how they used to just record stuff and then use the bang of like hitting corrugated iron. And walking around Shoreditch and Hoxton at the time, it was like a no-go area, and just banging corrugated iron and rolling stones and all that, actually rolling a stone along the floor and recording it and sampling it and using samplers. And it's really heavy on this album, so I'd love to know where they got a lot of these sounds from. Interesting, because I'd never even heard them sounds before. Very industrial, and I suppose that's with the artwork. It looks very industrial. Singles from this album: Everything Counts, Loving Itself. Again, I don't think that many singles released from this album. I mean, you've got Loving Itself, More Than a Party, Pipeline, Everything Counts, 2 Minute Warning, Shame, The Landscape is Changing, Told You So, and then every track. I mean, that in itself is like a little story. I'm not going to talk about this album anymore because I have spoke about this on a previous occasion in my top 20. If you haven't seen it, go back, and it's a whole video just on this album. But that is my number 1 Depeche Mode album, and it's Construction Time Again. Okay, so that's my top 5, and it's, as ever, this is called Top 5 Albums and the Dud. So the dud for this band, and I did plan on doing this a couple of weeks ago, but I really had to make sure I got this right. People automatically thought it was going to be, when I was talking to some people about this, they thought it was going to be like one of the new albums, but I actually quite like the new albums. The only one that came close to being a dud was Sounds of the Universe. I didn't really feel that album. I just kind of felt that album was a bit rushed, but there's a few good songs on there. This one here, I know people are going to go, what? That's a classic album. So remember, it's not an album that was big for the band and like everyone. It's me. What do I think of the album? So my dud for Depeche Mode, you ready for this? Is Exciter. I wanted to like this, and when I've talked to other kind of Depeche Mode fans, and they're going, "Yeah, it's what a classic album, brilliant." I don't get it. I feel with this album they were kind of lost, and it's almost like they were forced to kind of make an album, because is there a standout song? I mean, even to be quite honest, I think the artwork's a bit kind of lazy on this. I don't know what that's supposed to represent. It's not to me like a classic Depeche Mode album, you know, with the picture on the back, nothing major, inner sleeve, nothing. I just don't feel they were really into this album, to be honest. And it did come out as a double vinyl when it came out. What year did this come out? This came out in 2001. Wow, that late. I actually thought this came out in the 90s or, you know, late 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. I didn't realise it came out 2001. At this time, there's only 3 people in the band. Alan Wilder had left by then, and I think that's probably why. I think the band was still trying to find their feet. Dream On. Yeah, I mean, I know they released that as a single. You got Shine, The Sweetest Condition, When the Body Speaks, The Dead of Night. I think was a really good tune on here. I Feel Loved. For me personally, I just thought it was a rushed album. There's not one song on here that I kind of remember, and I have listened to this quite a few times because I wanted to like this album, but it really didn't do anything for me. So that is my dud, Depeche Mode Exciter. So, what do you think? Is my list correct? Did I get it wrong? Is there anyone out there who loves Exciter? I'm sure there is, because a lot of Depeche Mode fan friends of mine love this album. What would your dud be? Maybe it's an album I never thought about. But let me know your top 5 and your dud. Just let me know if you got it right or wrong. And that is my top 5 albums and a dud. And this week has been the pleasure of introducing and talking about Depeche Mode. Thank you very much.